So let's talk specifically about the challenges of our staff communicating with each other and with our customers over small, unpredictable, unreliable internet connections in the form of these home broadband or 4G connections. So there's fundamentally a few issues to deal with here. The first one is that the bandwidth of the connection is the first challenge. So home broadband is notoriously unreliable in terms of its bandwidth throughput. The way the networks are architected, as I'm sure most people know, is that they service an entire street with a certain amount of bandwidth or a certain area, and that the last mile of those connections or the very last meters of those connections are over copper connections and into the user's home over what used to be the telephone network connection. Now, the contention of those networks is dependent entirely on how many people are using those connections at the same time. So, for example, at 9 in the morning or 9:30 in the morning, when everybody's joining their corporate Zoom, then all of a sudden the entire street is trying to use video conferencing over the same bandwidth capability that was available to them, at 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock the day before, but the contention levels are much higher. The second thing that's a big challenge about those connection types is the latency associated with those connections. So obviously they're distance dependent, and the format of the delivery through copper, etc., is not the most high speed connection. So you end up with potentially quite long delivery delays of the packet delivery times for various products and services, and that can vary. Depending on whether or not the application like Zoom is taking account of that and optimizing it and performing clever assessments to make sure the experience is as good as it can be. And of course, you've got the alternative over a 4G or 3G network where you have equivalent problems in terms of transmission over the airwaves and contention on the mobile masts and so on, the number of connections that are being made at the same time. So you have those two main attributes of bandwidth and latency, but you have other attributes such as jitter and packet loss. So, the less reliable a network is, the more likely it is that it's going to drop packets in its transmission, or that packets will take a different route from A to B. And those sorts of things result in delivery sequence losses and delivery delays and in fact outright packet losses. And those things end up meaning that the experience that you're having is fundamentally eroded. So we've all been on a poor Zoom call or video conferencing call, I should say more generally, where it's obvious that either one or all or a number of the participants in the call have a quite poor internet connection. And the result is, a jerky moving around, loss of voice and loss of experience overall. At its extreme, the service becomes unworkable. And of course, if that's how you're trying to communicate with your customers through that sort of video or telephony, voice over IP telephony, then the end experience for the customer could surely be quite poor. Of course, if it's staff, internal operations, then the productivity of the business could be fundamentally eroded by poor solutions in this space.